Tattered flags waving dreams in our eyes. The crowds roar like a storm on the wind. We're the underdogs fighting again.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the American Hotspur here on Stateside Footy. I'm your host, Steve Silver, and boy, oh boy, man, it is absolutely real outside here in mid-Michigan as the thunder and lightning, the late spring lightning storms are upon us. So it's kind of crazy actually outside. Every time I see a lightning bolt, man, I kind of flinch like, woo, you know what I mean? I hope you guys are enjoying your Saturday morning over there in the UK. Moreover, I hope you're enjoying your weekend all together. And I want to thank you guys for taking the time to tune in this morning. And make sure you hit your like and subscribe buttons because we are on a race to 1,000 subs. And every single milestone that we hit, whether it's 500, whether it's 1,000, 2,000, etc., whatever, man, there is going to be giveaways. Man, I have planned for some really crafty giveaways that I think you guys will definitely enjoy. So make sure you hit those subscribe buttons and the like buttons as well too, and make sure you hit those notifications as well too, so you are up to date with everything we're doing here on Stateside Footy. All right, man. So as we approach the reopening of the transfer window, we need to talk about a few things, because when you look at the Tottenham Hotspur transfer budget, I gotta be honest with you guys, it's absolutely shambolic. For a Big Six club to have allegedly an estimated transfer budget of 150 million pounds, it almost feels a little disrespectful, especially when you consider the words that came out of Daniel Levy's mouth a couple days ago in a bromance video that that's the only thing you can say that was with Vinay and his declaration of wanting to win the Premier League, his declaration of wanting to win the Champions League, and when you look at the potential transfer budget as it stands, it's just absolutely shambolic. So we're going to get into that as well too. But first, let's go ahead and hit some news and notes, because there are some interesting things that Tottenham are targeting. Interesting names that Tottenham are targeting. And we begin with U.S. men's national team forward Timothy Weah, currently with Juventus. And the interesting thing about this one is there's a potential bidding war between Tottenham Hotspur and Everton. Now, that's not necessarily a surprise, considering David Moyes has always liked his American players. And this dates all the way back to Tim Howard, Landon Donovan was there. I think he might have even had, I want to say that he had Stuart Holden, maybe. But nonetheless, man, he is the type of guy that always loves to have an American player on his roster. He always seems to find those hidden gems, gives them an opportunity, gives them a run out in the Premier League. And generally speaking, it always comes back good. For Tottenham Hotspur, it makes sense because, when you look at a guy like Timothy Weah, And you look at the goal productions this season with Juventus. Sometimes he was, he is a sometime starter. Essentially, was a a role player for Juventus. But the ability to play both wing sides, the ability to play striker if you need him, the ability to drop back as a right back to cover defensively as well too. There's just so many things that a guy like Timothy Weah is able to do. And when you look at the actual transfer, his transfer, his transfer value, this isn't something that's going to break the bank, right? The question is whether or not you're going to be able to potentially bring him in on a loan with an option. If Juventus is the type of team that just wants to sell outright, you're not going to be looking at anything more than 25 million pounds. Probably lower. Probably, you're looking at maybe in the 20 to 21 million pounds. Me personally, these are the type of players that Tottenham should be targeting. When it comes to squad depth. Now, again, obviously, I'm biased. I don't know if you noticed that. So obviously, U.S. men's national team players, I would love, Tottenham to target. But that being said, this one actually makes a great deal of sense. From the standpoint, he's one of those guys that are going to come in and grind. You give him an opportunity, he's going to run with it. And that's exactly the type of players that Tottenham should be targeting, young, hungry players with a chip on their shoulder. And Timothy Weah definitely fits that bill. And the fact that, listen, man, he's been in Serie A now for a while. So he is, he's adjusted to top flight first minutes. And so moving to the Premier League would not be that big of a step up for him. And he's right at that age, 25 years old, where the next 4 years are going to be able to get the very best of Timmy Weah. And I think this would be an absolutely brilliant move for Tottenham Hotspur. The other piece of news that's worth talking about is that Tottenham Hotspur are very much in for Bryan Mbeumo. Now, we've already covered this a little bit ad nauseum. The fact that he's still leaning towards Manchester United. But that being said, Tottenham are expected to hijack these negotiations. They are all in with Bryan Mbeumo, and they will do whatever they have to do to make sure that he is wearing the lily white in the 2025-2026 campaign. And I like it because the first thing it does is it shows ambition, but it also fills a position with need. Granted, I understand Brendan Johnson last season, leading goal scorer. Okay, great, man. You kind of like you like the production that he showed last year. There was a lot of inconsistencies with Brendan Johnson, but you could still see the ceiling. He's only 22, 23 years old, and he's still progressing at the Premier League level. But Bryan Mbeumo, 20 goal scorer, 25 years old. Yes, he's asking for the moon, but that being said, this isn't something that Tottenham should flinch at. And again, if they're willing to give Timo Werner 165 million pounds per week on the wage bill, this should be something that Tottenham should be able to eclipse. It's not going to break the bank if you give them 180. So yeah, this is something that Tottenham has to be all in on. And they're going to have to do a lot of convincing, but it's not anything that is going to keep them strapped potentially, as we're going to get into it as well, too. I want to welcome a few people this morning. Adrian, Spurs Diehards TTID. Make sure you head over to Spurs Diehards TTID and give those guys some love because Drew and Adrian and Ian do an absolutely phenomenal job with Spurs Diehards, and of course I join them every Friday evening at 5:00, and they do. Those guys are just awesome, man. So head over there to Spurs Diehards TTID and show those guys some love. Big up, Adrian. It's good to see you. We got big bad Rom who says, "What's happening, friend? Are we still interested, FC?" Yeah, we're always going to be interested. We're always going to be interested. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Bye. But yes, so the last piece of news before we get into today's conversation involves record-breaking transfer moves, and it involves around one specific player, that's Antoine Semenyo. And the word is that they are looking for Spurs to break their all-time transfer record yet again. Last season, it was Dominic Solanke. And when you look at the figures that was paid, it was essentially $55 million pounds, 10 million in add-ons, and that actually eclipsed Tottenham's previous transfer record, 74 million US, and now they're looking for Tottenham to exceed that to land forward Antoine Semenyo. They're saying that they're not necessarily interested in selling him, but that being said, both Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur are a little put off that the cherry starting bid is at 65 million pounds. That would be $87.5 million. But that being said, it's interesting. It's interesting that Bournemouth are essentially they're rating Antoine Semenyo higher than Dominic Solanke, and it makes sense for a striker, right? Strikers aren't a dime a dozen, and even how do I say this? Because I don't think Dominic Solanke is mid. I think he's a little bit better than that. Now, is he world class? Not at all. But is he a good, reliable striker? Well, I would. Yeah, there's the lightning again. I would say that the answer is yes, he is. And so you can understand why Tottenham had to pay a premium to get a striker like Dominic Solanke through the door. Otherwise, you're looking at young players young unproven players that are still raw. And you're going to have to continue to develop even at the Premier League level, which means your goal contributions are going to suffer a little bit. So you kind of need that familiarity with the Premier League when it comes to the striker. So you can understand why Tottenham would have to pay $65 million pounds in order to get him. But the reality is Antoine Semenyo is not that. He's a good player. He's a really good player. But last year, 37 matches in the Premier League, 11 goals, 5 assists. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad at all. But is that worth breaking the transfer budget and transfer record in order to land him? That I don't know. Would I be willing to pay that for Brian Mbeumo before an Antoine Semenyo? Probably. If I'm just being 100% honest, yeah, I would probably give it to Mbeumo. You can see the progression that Mbeumo is getting better every single year, and that's not to say that Semenyo is not good, but I don't think he is. I don't think he's 65, 70 million pounds. I don't think he's that good. Me personally, when I look at Semenyo, and I'm trying to evaluate him, and then I look at his transfer, his value on the open market. Semenyo, in reality, he's a 40 million pound player. That shows you that he's good, but it doesn't tell you that he's great. And when you look at his scoring chart from last season, you're going to see stretches where there's not even a goal contribution. That's not to say that he can't facilitate a role with Tottenham. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that with Mbeumo, when you see the 20 goal seasons and you see the progression every single year where those goal contributions continue to rise, and he's kind of put himself in the driver's seat leverage wise. Whereas Antoine Semenyo, there's still some questions about whether or not whether the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. And it looks like Bournemouth is trying to squeeze Tottenham, which is normal. If you want something that's valuable, you're going to have to at least pay for it. But that being said, I would probably assume that there's going to be ongoing conversations before Tottenham either says yes or no. And this is probably going to be one of those transfers that are probably going to drag out through the summer. And again, I get the impression that Spurs fans just assume that you can say, "Hey, here's 60 million pounds. Let's just get it done." And that's not how it works. These things are, a coordinated ballet between clubs and agents and players. And it takes a couple of weeks for the players, the agents, and the teams to be on the same page, to get on the same page, to make sure you get your ducks in a row before ink is going to be put to pen. So, me personally, I think this is probably going to be one that's going to drag on through the summer. The ones that are going to be easy, the ones that the players that I would probably assume that are going to be easier are probably going to be young players. The Tyler Dibblings of the world. Maybe Johan Bakayako if they want to go in that direction. The ability to come to the Premier League, to play with one of the big six who happen to be in the Champions League this season. I think that any young player from the ages of 18 to 22 are going to sign up for that all day long, because it's going to mean a rapid jump in their weekly wages and an opportunity to showcase them on the biggest stage. So from that standpoint, I would assume that young players would jump at the opportunity. For those that have been around for a while, that are a little bit more experienced, they're going to take their time to make sure that not only is the money right, but also the fit is right as well too. For a guy like Brian Mbemo, it makes sense because he's played with Thomas Frank, so he knows exactly what the atmosphere and the environment he's going to walk into. For a guy like Antoine Semenyo, it looks like both player and club are looking, to get paid. So that one is going to be interesting as well too as it progresses. All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of this one. Because we have a lot to talk about this morning. And let's go ahead and get into this right here. And for those that are wondering, this is the estimated transfer budget for Tottenham Hotspur. Now, I use the dollar sign, but obviously we're speaking in pounds, but I didn't have the pound sign. But that is the estimated transfer budget for Tottenham Hotspur. A team that is in the top 10 in the Deloitte Money League as far as revenue and profit. A team that essentially prints money. And this is your transfer budget. 150 million pounds. And again, I don't necessarily like using this word, but let's keep it for what it is. This is absolutely shambolic. And for those that are wondering, how does a transfer budget even come into play? Well, it is based on a percentage of the total revenue that has been brought in from the previous season. That's generally how it works. And now here's the interesting thing. Okay. It's, generally speaking, it is going to be a percentage. On average, it's about 4%. Your transfer budget is going to be about 4% of the total revenue that is brought in, or whatever, or if there's any more add-on, that usually comes from your ownership group. And as we know, Tottenham Hotspur they usually dump about £5 million a year into the club, which, for those that are keeping score, that puts them like what, 40th? When it comes to ownership contributions, and I'm not talking about profit or revenue that is generated through sponsorship deals, television money. We're talking about pure dollars given from the ownership group to the actual football team. And Tottenham ranks below championship sides when it comes to ownership contributions, which is just absolutely crazy. But it also paints the picture of what Tottenham actually are, which is what they've wanted to do from day one. Edic wanted a club that was going to be 100% sustainable, that would live off their total revenues, right? That's going to be able to operate not only a club but also bring players in. A lot of that should be through player sales, and we've seen some pretty big player sales. But the reality is, 150 million pounds is laughable. For instance, right? Let's give a little for instance here. Spurs want to be ambitious this summer. That's what they want to. They want to be ambitious, and they want to move with intent to show other players that should take Tottenham Hotspur seriously. Okay, so we're talking Brian Mbemo. Brian Mbemo might cost them what, 70 million pounds? Okay. Let's just throw Antoine Semenyo on that pile. Let's say they get both of them, and they're 65 million, 70 million pound players, 65 to 70 million pound players. Well, that's 140 million right there just in transfer fees. Which means the rest of their window are either going to be, are going to be loans, or maybe even more young players, right? So that doesn't necessarily align with the ambition of what Daniel Levy says that he wants, which is to make sure Thomas Frank is adequately backed for his first season. Or this could be a situation where you're looking at maybe the Timothy Weah type players, which are, essentially spot starters, but very good squad players that are going to be in that 20 to 25 million pound range. And don't get me wrong, Spurs need an upgrade with their squad, man. Let's not kid ourselves. That is exactly what they need. They need, reliable squad depth. But that being said, they also have a need. For me personally, I'll be the one that's consistent. That was going to say that it has to be across the front three, because one of the problems that Spurs had, especially in the second half, was consistently putting the ball in the back of the net. Sonny goes down for a little bit, and now you're using a raw left winger in Matisse Tell. Brendan Johnson is Brendan Johnson. And last season, he at least developed himself into, a relegation merchant type player where he can actually score goals against teams that are in the bottom half of the Premier League. But when it comes to the top half of the Premier League, he struggles mightily. So that being said, there are holes that have to be fixed with the starting 11. And 150 million pounds is good for, if you're looking for experience, maybe 2 players. Not good enough. Not good enough. There's the occasional free that you can get, like a guy like Kyle Walker-Peters, but the reality is 150 million pounds is shambolic, considering the revenue in which Tottenham Hotspur continue to generate. I want to give a big shout out to Wayne Bonner, who says, "Good morning, whatever time of day it is it may be for you. How are you all doing on this lovely day?" Well, Wayne, I'm doing absolutely quite lovely, man. So thank you for asking, man. I hope you're actually enjoying your Saturday late morning, early afternoon. Hopefully you have some good plans for today. I know that I'm probably going to go back to sleep because I only got like 2 or 3 hours of sleep last night. So there's Derma, who says he'll be here in 20 minutes. Yeah. And Wayne Bonner again says, every summer Tottenham talk about spending big on players, then go out and bring in a bunch of kids. I'll believe the club are serious when they prove it. Yeah, and I think that's I think that you're absolutely right there, Wayne. And I think that is what the summer window has to be about. It has to be about proving it, moving with intent. And I always say that, moving in intent. What does that mean? It means, money talks, bullshit walks. We have known for years that Spurs are willing to spend to a certain amount, but they're not going to go over there, because it means that the percentage ratio between revenue and player wages continues to rise, and Spurs are at that level where I think it's like 40% of their yearly spending is on players. When you look at clubs like Aston Villa, which is like 90%, you know what I mean? Like, there are teams that are like in that 60, 70%, and Tottenham Hotspur just simply will not be one of those teams. But that being said, that has to change. It absolutely has to change. And I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. And, hopefully you guys can, feel me on this one. But every year, every single season, the cost of winning continues to rise. It is expensive to win the Premier League. The outliers early in the Blackburn Rovers won it, I think, in the first year of the Premier League. It was an outlier. They spent a little bit and they were able to get to that level. And then maybe Leicester City in 2016, which was an outlier. It's the exception, it's not the rule. The rule is those that continuously spend. Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal back in the day, Manchester United. There's a reason why they've won a bunch of Premier League titles. Chelsea, because they continue to spend. And I for me, it almost feels like, like especially with Chelsea, it almost feels like you're throwing darts at a dartboard, hoping something will stick. But the Manchester Uniteds, man, moving with intent, making sure that when you do spend money, you're spending it on the right player, right position, those type of players that will fit into the atmosphere, which is something that Liverpool does well. You look at the signing of Florian Wirtz, fits perfectly in what the environment of what Arne Slot has put together there in Liverpool. Same thing with Jeremy Frimpong. Makes perfect sense. And then you look at what Man City's trying to recover from. But that being said, it's moving with intent and making sure that it's not just winning the transfer market, if you understand what I'm saying, right? Because you're splashing huge cash because you want the headlines and you want the credibility of what you guys are doing. But really, for the most part, it's all about fit. And sometimes fit is expensive, but you do it because the idea is it's football. You're trying to win football games. So let's see. Wayne Bonner again. Who actually is in control of transfers? Is it still Levy or someone else? Well, I get the impression that it is now. It's now going to be coming down to Vinny. It looks like he is the president of football operations, and it's running with him. And I would probably assume that he didn't take this job unless there was some safeguards in place, which means that he's allowed to run this football team without interference of Daniel Levy. So I'm going to say Vinny, but time will tell. We got the Rain Man. 42% of revenue is spent on player salaries. Not even sure if that includes Beyonce. And that's pretty funny. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it was like 42%, which I think breaks them like, I don't know, 10th or 11th in the Premier League. When you look at the total net spend, it's still insanely low compared to the rest of the Big Six. Let's see. I like the way Liverpool are doing business. They're bringing ready-to-go players in, players they need, and only serve to make them even stronger. Yeah, exactly. It's called moving with intent. And that's the thing, right? You look at a guy like Florian Wirtz, who is, his career within the Bundesliga, his international career, his career playing within the Champions League, and the dude brings everything that you would want in a player. And if it means that you're spending 116 million pounds in order to get him, well, that might be your only signing. That might be your only signing or big signing of the transfer window. But it's also a statement of intent that if they target a specific player, they're going to be able to get it done. And they're not worried necessarily how much it costs, because all of that is going to be offset by future revenue. All right. So now that we have gotten into it, I want to say that I'm the type of guy that looks at the loan army as an extension to your transfer budget. See, the issue that I have is if you're only getting 150 million pounds from your ownership group based on 4% of the total revenue, it's absolutely disgraceful. So for a guy like Vinny and a guy like Paratici, they have a lot of work to do to actually raise that transfer budget, because this has to be somewhere in the 250 to 300 million pound range, and so you're going to have to make some very, very, very difficult decisions. And let me go ahead and let me bring this one up real quick, as I want to see this right here. There it is. All right. Let me go ahead and let me add one more name to this list, and then I'll bring it up. And it is. All right. So let's start with this one right here. And these are the names right here that I would like to see sold from the actual first team players that I think that are more valuable outside the club than inside the club. And what I mean by that is their market value versus their value to the actual club. So let's go ahead and start with these four names. And these are the names that these are the names that I actually would like to see out the door because of the value and the money that they bring in. Okay, and we're going to start with Richarlison, and obviously this is the name that I know that Thomas Frank has mentioned that he likes. But when we're talking about value to the club, the biggest problem with Richarlison is he was brought in to potentially challenge Harry Kane and be that Robin to his Batman when it comes to scoring goals. And we understand that Richarlison can play with flair. We understand that he's got he's good on the ball, can create space. But the biggest issue with Richarlison is he's always hurt. He's always hurt. And since he's been in Tottenham Hotspur, he has yet to replicate really his he's yet to replicate his value as he did with Everton. Very talented guy, but that being said, for what Tottenham need, essentially from a deputy to Dominic Solanke, somebody that is actually going to push Solanke in training, that is going to give him a little bit of a little run for his money. That's not Richarlison, and I would rather take the 20 million pounds, which is his market value right now, and that's far below what Tottenham paid. But that being said, that's his market value right now. And within the Premier League, they're going to find one or two bidders that are going to potentially get into a little bit of a bidding war. Maybe that price goes up to 25 with add-ons. Who knows? But for me, the value is better if he leaves. Same thing with Basuma. And Basuma, I believe his market value is somewhere in the 25 million pound 25 million pound range, and I would probably assume you're not going to get that just because of the inconsistency. But also, let's not kid ourselves. Basuma had a terrible year, and everybody points to his knockout round run in the Europa League, and yeah, you can give him flowers for his play, but for the most part, he has been absolutely dreadful the entire season up to like 3 or 4 games at the end of the season. There was a stretch where he didn't even make the match day squads because, Ange Postecoglou could not trust him. And that being said, it's like, Thomas Frank likes him. That doesn't mean he rates him. It just means that he likes him. But that being said, I'm sure he likes a lot of players, but recognizes his value outside the club. The other name is Radu Dragusin, and let's be honest, Spurs right now are absolutely deep at the center back position. Me personally, I think Kevin Danso is a better fit as a squad player at the right center back position. Pairing up with Christian Romero. Listen, man, Dragusin, I never really liked him when he came into the winter window a couple years ago. Okay, cool, young center back that that definitely has ball playing skills. But as his Spurs career progressed, man, you can see that he couldn't necessarily handle the speed and pace of the Premier League game. Not to mention the fact that he was developed in a back three system. And so some people will say, well, wait a second, Thomas Frank plays with a back three. Yeah, but there's a difference. There's a difference between playing in a back three in Romania and a back three in England. Just saying. Anyway, and finally, Sonny. And of course, this is something that we have talked ad nauseum, but I think it's time for Sonny to exit the club. The legacy is solidified, winning the trophy. But that being said, if there is a possibility that they can get 50+ million pounds on a transfer budget, you're going to snap that up 100%. Just with these 4 players. Just based on market value, would be a projected incoming of 90 million pounds, which now pushes you to about 240 million pounds now for your transfer budget. I know it doesn't work like that, but that being said, it's just these 4 players off the first team brings you, at the very least 90 million pounds to add to that transfer budget. And it makes sense that they would do it. I think because of the depth at these positions, minus striker. I get it. We need another striker. But when you look at Basuma, Dragusin, and Son, those are positions that already have depth. And from that standpoint, these are not necessarily difficult decisions to make at all. Let's see what we have right here. Let's see. Looks like we have some new guys here. We have let's see. Rain Man. Yep, we hear so much about the Brighton model, and now we have the ex-Brentford manager who developed players. Surely the Liverpool model is a better approach. Yeah, that's great, man. Yeah, that seems kind of obvious, right? The Liverpool approach is yeah, for sure, and they're so stable. That's the thing. It's like the stability in the way they operate from their front office to their to their coaching staff to their players. Man, they are deliberate in the transfers in which they want. They'll go out there and get it, and it just seems like every player that they target and they bring in comes in and automatically just hits the ground running. What's the point, FC? What's going on, my guy? Thanks for tuning in to this morning, and also make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Levy spends just enough to take part, but to never compete. Yeah, because he's risk averse, 100%. He's risk averse, and that's nothing new. He what I like to say is Daniel Levy follows the American professional sports model. Where all owners are genuinely risk averse because they don't want to spend their own money, or they don't want to spend their own money to a certain extent because you know that the revenue is going to be greater, so you're not going to cut into your profit. Wayne Bonner asks, "What's the watch along later?" I'm debating today whether we're going to have a Club World Cup watch along. That potentially can happen. I know for a fact tomorrow night, 7:00 Eastern, I believe 11:00 UK time, the U.S. men's national team plays Haiti in the following the final game of group play. Obviously, the U.S. has already advanced to the knockout rounds of the Gold Cup, so that's on schedule right now tomorrow night. But chances are pretty good if I look at the schedule. Maybe there's a Club World Cup match that's going to entice me. So I'll definitely let you know by the end of today's show. Let's see. Audio Artisan. Afternoon, Steve and chat. What's going on, my guy? It's good to have you along, Audio. I really do appreciate your commitment to the chat, man. I always like seeing your name there, and I do appreciate the participation in the chat, my guy. We have Wayne Bonner. Afternoon, Audio, and of course the love gets sent right back. What's the point? FC says Richarlison was brought in because he was a cheaper option. And because he was on low wages. Yeah, well, that is true. And when you look at the goal contributions that Richarlison was able to give for Everton over that course of his time there in Merseyside, that he essentially outscored his wages for what he was getting. He did a very good job at Everton, but now that he's actually being paid accurately to his goal contributions, he's just been injured the entire time. Let's see. Wayne Bonner says Richie and Dragusin could be useful. However, the injuries are a big problem. Basuma too, inconsistent cash in. Son should make his own decision. See, I disagree with that. Right? I actually don't think Dragusin's going to be useful. And as a matter of fact, I will give you one example of why I don't believe it. And this came in the Europa League against Karabag, and Karabag was not a good team. Karabag is, they're your token, Middle Eastern Turkish team that gets to play in that competition. But when they were at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, early in it, one of their worst players was able to skin Dragusin, and Dragusin's recovery was to take a red card to get himself off the pitch. And listen, he's had enough sample size to prove that he can either be a squad player or better for this team. And for me, he's consistent. He's consistently not only let himself down, but the club as well too. I don't rate Dragusin at all. As a matter of fact, I rate Danso far more than I rate Dragusin. And listen, man, Danso's had a smaller sample size, but he's played a lot better. And you can see that Postecoglou trusted Danso more than he actually trusted Dragusin. Dragusin had to play because they had nobody else. If there was another option, if Danso was there, Danso probably plays over Dragusin. As far as Sonny, I also disagree as well. You can't allow Sonny to drag this on. You cannot allow Sonny to make that decision. Tottenham Hotspur have to do what's best for Tottenham Hotspur. And if they get a transfer offer that they can't refuse, they have to take it. Period, point blank. Now, Sonny can turn it down, but the reality is you have to make that decision for him, because the one thing you don't want to do is have these things drag on without any type of resolution or any type of idea of which direction he's going into. So as a club, you have to make that decision for him. Rain Man. I really don't think anyone in the Premier League is buying Richie given his current injury record. The interesting thing is I've actually heard that both Everton and Leeds are going to potentially kick the tire. And it makes sense for Everton. 100% it makes sense for Everton because they're moving into the new stadium, and so they're looking at different options to upgrade and bringing back Richarlison at a number that makes the most sense for them. Yes, Spurs will sell at a loss, but that being said, playing under David Moyes, Richarlison will I think he'd flourish. To be honest with you, we have Kate Rixham. What's going on, Kate? Levy won't change his wage structure. That's a problem. I would sell both strikers. That's interesting. You would actually sell Dominic Solanke. That's interesting. The interesting thing is whether or not they will change the wage structure, because I do believe that Vinny was brought in to make this football club better. And there is something to what he was saying, that does he have the intestinal fortitude to look Daniel Levy and said, like, listen, man, we got to change, or we're never going to be that team that's going to win the Premier League. At best we could be a top four, but we're never going to get over that hump because we're unwilling to do it. I think that me personally, I would love for Vinny to be that guy to say that. What's the point? FC says the majority of players have been dreadful. 22 losses says it all. Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? But there is a discrepancy, right, between the starting 11, the real starting 11 that we saw in the Europa League versus the rotated squad that played in the Premier League. From that standpoint, the 22 losses were pretty much on the squad depth when they rotated in the Premier League. They could barely hang with West Ham. So let's see. Audio Artisan says, I can see Spence wanting to leave. He proved himself last season. If someone offers him a first team spot in a World Cup year, I can see him wanting that rather being a third choice with us. What's funny, audio? I actually said the exact same thing, that there is a good possibility that Jed Spence will now want to prove himself. He's under contract. And again, Tottenham have to agree to it. But I could see Spence wanting to leave. You're absolutely, again, man, great point, man. It is a World Cup year, and he's right now on the fringes of the English national team. There were times last season where he probably should have gotten a call up to the England side because there was a stretch, I believe, from December through February where he was absolutely on fire. And he was putting some of the league's best wingers in his back pocket. So he can play at this level. Now, granted, down the stretch he didn't play well at all. Now you wonder whether or not he just lost form or if he was disinterested. Who knows? But that being said, as it stands right now, the interesting thing though is if they bring in Kyle Walker-Peters, to back up Pedro Porro at the right back position, that leaves Jed Spence as the backup to Destiny Udogie. And under Thomas Frank, I could see a situation where that left back spot is going to be fluid depending on the opponent. right? Depending on who that wing is on the right side, will determine whether Jed Spence starts or not. And I think that he's capable. And I actually, maybe it's just me. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed, but the question is whether Jed Spence is better than Destiny Udogie at this point, and I don't know that answer. What's the point? Says 100% Kate. Here are we hear the same nonsense from Levy every year, but the transfer window always paints a picture of zero ambition. Kinda. I think the question is whether or not you believe that these young players are ambitious. Especially when you see the development of a guy like Lucas Bergvall, and you can see his ceiling. Now, whether or not that actually what meets your criteria of ambition, that's in the eye of the beholder. But those were very, very savvy moves on Tottenham's part. Same with Archie Gray, Kevin Danso, as examples. Wayne Bonner says Dragonson could be a good center back, but he's too similar to Sanchez, and he can't handle the pressure pretty well. Yeah, I think, like, for instance, if Dragonson were to go to the Dutch league, he would be awesome. Maybe the right Serie A team or the right Ligue 1 team, because I think that's his level. Maybe the Bundesliga. Maybe. But I think that's his level. I don't think the Premier League is his level. I don't think he can consistently play. Let's see. I can see Radu leaving and Vuskovic being fast-tracked. Yeah, I like that. I like that one as well, too. Let's see. Agreed. Audio artisans. Spence should be on one if be one if the first name's on the list. He is too good to be wasted. Yeah, but again, right? So it depends on what your definition of wasted, right? So it depends on how Thomas Frank is going to rotate for the Champions League, right? So if this is going to be a situation where the first team is going to play, the starting 11 is going to play in the Champions League and the Premier League, which would leave the cup competitions to a guy like Jed Spence. I can see him not necessarily being happy with that, but I guess everything depends on the training, right? This preseason and how he comes into camp ready to go. Same thing with Destiny Udogie. And they're allowed to have an honest competition at that left back spot. And, you would probably assume that the best person is going to claim that starting job, at least for, the first match against PSG in the Super Cup and also Burnley. But that being said, one of the things that Thomas Frank does, on top of being tactically fluid, he's also quite fluid with, the way that he's going to play certain players in that position. So I actually think that Jed Spence is actually going to get a lot of run this season. Let's see. He's already being fast-tracked with Croatia. Yeah, Vuskovic. Yeah. Let's see. It would be a shame to lose Spence. Yes, 100%. It's always quantity over quality. That's the common theme under Levy. I don't know, man. We've had some quality, man. Just saying. Gareth Bale, Sonny, very good quality. Harry Kane, very good quality. Bergvall, very good quality. I understand what you're saying, but that being said, it's like, the funny thing is, like, when they sold Harry Kane, or they sold, what was it? They sold, Gareth Bale to Real Madrid, and what they tried to replace it. You could probably make the case that was quantity. There was some quality, just not a lot. Let's see. Wayne Bonner, Spence would be a bigger loss than some may think. Yeah, I would agree. Let's see. Maybe Spence leaves and KWB becomes the right back, left back cover with Gray again. See, I don't want that at all. I don't want Archie Gray playing right back, or I don't want to see Archie Gray playing right back or center back ever again. He is a natural CDM, and his development has to start at that position. We saw that at the end of the season. Ange Postecoglou gave him specific games in which he ran him at the CDM. For Thomas Frank and his staff, he has to be like, it's nice to have that to be able to play multiple positions, but he literally has to develop at that position. And the only way he gets better is if he gets games at that position. Me personally, Kyle Walker-Peters and Jed Spence are I think the best, the best coverage at those two wingback positions. And me personally, I just think that Archie, you're stunting his development by playing him out of position. Let's see, we have G Giant 68. Morning, Steve and Chat. Good morning, G Giant. Make sure you do yourself a favor and hit the like and subscribe buttons. And I also want to thank you for becoming a member yesterday. That was a really cool move yesterday. So I do want to send some flowers to G Giant. Wayne Barner, it's like I can see Gray being used as fullback cover. He's good there. Kinda. At times he looked good, and at times he looked out of play. It looked like he couldn't handle the pressure of playing right back. Sometimes he was caught out of position, and you can understand. He's like, well, 18 years old. It's like, well, listen, man, he's a natural CDM. Natural CDM. I think Spurs would be foolish selling Jed Spence and relying on, Kyle Walker-Peters and Archie Gray. Both of them are natural right backs, right? So, yeah, not on that one. Let's see. Sun can give us 2 more good seasons. Yeah, but here's the thing, Matthew. That's if you believe that he can still start. He's going to be 33 years old. And is Sun, with his skill set right now, are you confident that you can run him out there and he can give you quality week after week? Because this wasn't just a last year issue. And I think he had like 11 goals last season. But the reality was, for the large part of the season, he didn't necessarily look great. And some will say that he was injured. Yeah, he was dealing with some injuries. But this wasn't just a last year thing. The year before as well, too. And if you remember, he went to play the Asia Cup, I believe, in January. And when he came back, he only had like 5 goals the rest of the way. Was wildly inconsistent coming back from the Asia Cup. And since that point, man, he has not been, the Sonny that we know he can be. Only showing that in little patches. But I can't remember the last time that he actually went on a purple patch. Just saying, man. And for me, it's like I don't want him to be a character of himself or that's the thing, is I don't want him to become a joke. I don't want him to be the guy that's coming off the bench for the last 10 minutes. That's not good for Sun. What I will say is that at least with the Saudi Pro League, it's a level where for a fact he's going to be able to start and actually, potentially be a goal contributor, because that league is what it is. But he's also going to be able to make like $25 million a season. And I think it's time, right? Because Sonny fulfilled his, I guess you can say, his Tottenham destiny. He stayed to win the trophy. He won the trophy. And he's given 10 good years here at Tottenham Hotspur. And I just think it's time, man. Wayne Bonner, I love Danso. Damn good addition to the squad and team. I agree. We have G Giant. Can Tottenham expand their budget? I believe they can. The question is, will they? They absolutely have to. Let's see. He goes on to say, I agree, Steve. I think Danso was a better option to Dragusin. For me, a future captain. That's kind of bold. What's the point, FC? It doesn't matter. Our forward line is terrible, and you get what you pay for. Agreed. It's up on the Spurs website that Levy has put in a $50 million for Kudos. Another low IQ, low end product winger, 5 goals, 4 assists last season. That's funny. All right, so let's see. And it looks like the Dermatron is here. Derma, good morning.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late, Steve.
I
apologize, man. I'm later than I wanted to be, so I'm very sorry. Look, I'm just catching on the end. I'm just reading the chat about Sonny. I suppose you've had the discussion about Sonny.
But just briefly, it's more a conversation with the chat. It looks like there are some folks that kind of want to keep him around, but me personally, because the transfer budget is listed at 150 million, if they can maximize some of these first team sales, me personally, I don't have a problem with sending Levy.
Well, I was thinking about that on the way home. when you said about 150, and
Yep.
if you put sales in there, that works out to be around, say, if you work out, you get 17 million for Højbjerg, you probably
Right.
get
We're gonna
50 million.
get there.
You probably get 50 million for
Yeah, for sure.
Richarlison.
I agree.
So you're looking over sort of 200 million, right? And everyone's saying, oh, 200 million isn't a great transfer budget. Well, 200 million is a pretty good transfer budget if you think about it, because if you look at big teams, right? Apart from Man City, you look at the example of Man United back in the day, or Liverpool back in the 80s. They only bought 2 or 3 players every summer. They never spent big. It was more like, right, we're going to place Kenny Dalglish for Kevin Keegan back in the 70s, and we're going to buy, say, Graham Souness for, I don't know, I think Steve Highway in the 70s or 80s for Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool is really only has really been that team that really maximize, moving with intent, right? They have, they have a transfer strategy that is based on absolute need, not absolute want. Like, for instance, like Chelsea is the king of just buying players because they can and they want, but it's rarely for need. And you saw exactly just how kind of faulty Chelsea has been over the last couple of years. But teams like Liverpool, teams like Manchester City, and whether City does spend a lot, they generally spend on need as well too. And you can see exactly you can actually see the trophies that are there to prove it. But what I will say is when you look at these numbers down here, Derma, and all these numbers are based on transfer their value on the open market, not necessarily what's going to be paid. But if you're starting with these 4 players off your first team, 90 million pounds added, that essentially is 240 million pounds. And I think you're absolutely right. A transfer budget in that $200 to $300 million range actually allows them not only to to get 2 of their targets. So, for instance, let's say it's Brian Mbemo and it's Xavi Simons. We'll just throw those 2 names out there. It still gives you the flexibility to bring in players on a free. So you're talking Kyle Walker-Peters, and then potentially like 2 or 3 loans.
I mean, I was told this morning that another club's going to come in for Eze, and Uguri is going to Liverpool. That is for sure. That will happen there. But look, if you do it smartly, you can buy decent players. You can buy a decent squad. There isn't much to improve in this squad, maybe in certain areas, but the nucleus of this squad, I think, is there with the players we do have. I think.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
Like when you take a look at the starting 11, and then you take a look at when you take a look at the squad rotation and the depth, how many players do you think need to come in this summer?
I think if you're looking at squad depth, you're probably looking at 5 or 6 players.
Yeah.
Me personally. Yeah. I think we need a decent backup centre back. We need a decent backup number 6. We need a decent backup number 8. We need a decent backup striker, and we need a decent winger. Now, we did get Matthias Tellin and we did get Dancer in. So does that cover you for them? Probably, but you need one more player, I think, to fill into them positions. But I don't think we're that far away. We're not that far away from actually having a decent squad. And if you look at the squad we did have before Ange Postecoglou came in to the squad we've got now, the squad we have now is light years ahead of what we had before. Light years ahead of a Ben Davis, or not Ben Davis, Eric Dyer or Darren Sanchez. I still think it was a mistake to get rid of Højbjerg. I do. I really think that was a big mistake by Ange. He should have kept Højbjerg. I think Højbjerg gave you something. But
technically Højbjerg is still Tottenham property. Because it was I think that was a 1-year loan with an obligation to buy after. But that being said, it would be interesting to see how Thomas Frank actually views Højbjerg Højbjerg and whether he'd be willing to stay or actually go to Marseille.
As far as I remember, as far as I've been told, I think Højbjerg has gone to Marseille. I think it was a loan with a deal at
essentially
the end
an
of it.
obligation.
Yeah, so I think that I don't think unless there's a last minute hitch, I think the price was agreed and everything. I think he's happy there anyway. He's happy playing for Marseille as well. So
look,
I think
it's a league that he's good in. It's a league
Yeah,
that he's really good at.
yeah, I still think it was a mistake to let him go, to be fair. But if you look at Thomas Frank, and I know I see people were sunny. I know a few people were saying, I mean, Kate said she's not inspired with the scouting team. I don't think I am either. I think we've rarely missed Paratici. We've rarely missed his guidance when it comes to scouting players. We've rarely missed his knowledge. I don't think Johan Lang or Scott Munn have been absolutely brilliant. I think Paratici, we've missed him. We've missed his guidance, and he needs to rebuild that again with Gabbiadini. If them two are back in place, then I think we can have a really. I was told this morning we're going to have a decent summer, not a brilliant summer, not a bad summer, but a decent summer. And and if somebody said to me to that just after Andrew was sacked, you're going to have a decent transfer window, I think I would have taken that. I think I really would have done, to be fair. But we can only judge what this is like on the 1st of September. That's the only time we can judge.
That's exactly
right. We can't judge it now, and we can't judge it. I mean, no team's bought anyone. Everyone's away on holidays. I was told this morning, people are starting to come back next week. And then I was also told this morning that in the voice note that Tottenham's transfer window will go into overdrive as from next week. So we can expect to see a lot of incomings and outgoings coming next week.
I would like to see their first move being one that's going to move the needle for a lot of fans and actually get that excitement moving forward. But when you look at these 4 names, 3 of them come from a position that already has depth right now, and so it's not something where you necessarily have to right away replace these ones. The only one would be Richarlison, because as you know, their depth at the striker position is lacking. But that being said, if like an Everton or a Leeds would come in with a $20 million offer for Richarlison, $20 to $25 million offer for Richarlison, yes, you're selling at a loss. But right now, Tottenham actually is actually better for the 25 million, 30 million pounds than actually having Richarlison actually on the roster.
I think Richie, I'm sorry, Steve, didn't cut across you, but I think Richie will go for around 40, 45 million. And I think
that would be lovely. That would be lovely.
Yeah, I think where he will go is likely Everton, or if he goes to the Saudi Pro League, they will pay up to 50 or 55 million. So
I heard that Leeds might be kicking the tire on. Leeds just got promoted to the Premier League, and they're probably looking for a striker. And I've heard that Leeds are kicking the tires on him. I know that Richie does not want to go to the Saudi Pro League because this is, again, a World Cup year, and he wants to be in the Premier League. Heading into the World Cup 2026. Post-2026 World Cup, I would probably assume that he wouldn't care making money in Saudi. But for right now, he kind of wants to stay in the Premier League. But, switching gears real quick, I want to bring this up as well, too, because this is our loan army as it stands. Brian Hill, Aleo Valiz, Manor Solomon, Ashley Phillips, Dane Scarlett, Alfie Devine, Matthew Craig, Jamie Donnelly, Josh Keeley. We have George Abbott. We have Kerry Blodorn and Min Hook Yang. That last year saw a lot of loan time. But let's look at this. Let's take a step away from the emotion, because I know there are a lot of fans that think that Jamie Donnelly could play a role this season. A lot of people like Josh Keeley. But when I look at this list, and then when you look at their transfer value, all these 12 players put together are, 46.6 million, are worth 46.6 million. Now, that's not necessarily the number that they're going to get sold for, but at the very least, you're barking up an extra 50 million. Now, for me, when I look at this, obviously there's going to be names that are going to stick around. I think, Yang Min Hook is going to stick around in this club, whether he's going to give a legit run with the first team or get back on loan. But when I look at this list, all I see are this is the loan army should be your profit extending arm from the academy to the actual loan army. like this is what Tottenham should be doing to maximize their transfer budget, to be adding to it, because you have Brian Hill and Valise and Solomon that actually do have a market for their services. And I would probably think that Ashley Phillips, Dane Scarlett, Jamie Donnelly, and Josh Keeley would actually bring in a profit for them to extend that transfer budget. I don't know how you feel about this, Durham, but that being said, that's the whole point of a transfer army, is to get them out on loan, to develop them, and hopefully like Jamie Donnelly and Josh Keeley had with Leighton Orient. Now you're in a position where you can sell high on these players, because for me, you want to make sure that you at least have a transfer budget that allows you to bring in those 6 players that you need. And me personally, I look at this and I say, you know what? Yes, I like Jamie Donnelly, but would I actually like to sell high on them? That allows us to bring in another striker, or it allows us to bring in Antoine Semenyo, or whoever the case may be. Absolutely. Is your mic on, bud?
Sorry, bad professional. Sorry, just next door's a bit of noise, and my young lad's cooking lunch. So sorry, I just put it on mute so it wouldn't disturb you from actually really some good points that you've made there. Yeah. Look, I'm looking forward, because we're covering the under-21s this season. I can't wait for that. And some of these young players I'm going to look forward to watching. But if you go through that list, Hill, I think, is gone. I think Velez will go. I think Solomon will go to Leeds. I don't think. I think he played so well for Leeds last season. I think he's settled there. I think Ashley Phillips will probably go on loan again. Dean Scarlett will probably.
I think he's going to get sold.
Dean Scarlett's a funny one for me, because he got very few first team appearances under Ange, and I'm just wondering if Thomas Frank will start using the youngsters more, because we have a talented bunch of youngsters within the Tottenham under-21 team. Dean Scarlett, Devine, Craig Donnelly needs first team action. I think Craig will go out on loan again. I think Alfie Devine might go out on loan again. Josh Keeley, who I'm raving about, the next Pat Jennings. Josh Keeley, for me, an young Irish lad, come over to Tottenham. Absolutely, I can't wait to see him in action for Tottenham. I think he will go out on loan, but I would love to see him get some first team appearances, maybe in an early round of a League Cup or something like that. Abbott, I can see probably going on loan, probably being sold. Bolden, probably the same. Min Hit Yang. He had a very good season. Yeah, he had a very good season at QPR. I think he be kept around the first team. If Sonny's been kept for one more year, then I think you keep Yuck around to get the experience of Sonny, and let Sonny guide him what it means to be a Tottenham player, what it means to be a first team player. So I may see he may go out on loan. I may be totally wrong, but I think he might be kept round. But for me, Dean Scarlett and Alfie Devine, Josh Keeley, I think they all need to go out on loan, but kept around the first team as well. And if they are at Tottenham, we need to use our youngsters more, because we can. When it comes to, you look at United in '92, they brought all them youngsters together.
Sure.
We need to start using them more, and because they're decent players. Some of them are really decent players. I just think Thomas Frank is that man. And I think he will. I think he will use the youngsters. I think he will use them, and I think they will get better with experience. And I think we should be very excited about the future of Tottenham Hotspur right now, because we have some really talented youngsters coming through the system at the moment.
All right. Very good points, but let's turn to that. It looks like Wayne Bonner has gifted one THFC TWD membership. So big up, Wayne, for gifting the membership. That was absolutely fantastic. But here's a question from the chat that always comes up when we're talking about youth players. He goes on. Rain Man goes on to say, "You're missing the academy trained issue. There is also a problem that our academy is not seeing progression. So we are now leaking good players to Man City, etc., where there's tangible progression." See, my issue with this, Derma, is that I don't want to see any of these. I'd rather see these players sold than sitting on the bench because they have to fill a quota for academy trained players for the Champions League, right? They're going to fill a roster spot, but they're not necessarily going to get off the bench. And so, the question then is like, okay, well, I think Jamie Donnelly's 20. So if let's just say that he is, a member of the first team, and he's only there because we have to fill a quota for academy trained players on the Champions League to fill a Champions League quota. To me, I think that my biggest issue is the fact that their development is going to get disrupted because they're not necessarily going to be playing. They're just there to fill up a roster spot. So when you think about Jamie Donnelly and the progression that he showed with Leyton Orient last year, okay, cool. So he's going to make the team coming out, but there's not going to be a role for him. So he's probably going to be playing U21s again as a 20-year-old because he has to play somewhere. But that being said, that was my biggest issue last year with Mikey Moore. Eventually, and that was the problem that I had with Will Lancashire as well too. Before Will eventually went out on loan, but Mikey Moore very rarely played, but he was also there because of numbers as well too, for the Europa League as well too. That's my biggest issue is I don't want to see these young kids just sitting and not facilitating a role except for a roster spot. Versus I would rather take the money because at least he's going to be playing somewhere. You mentioned loans. Okay. It depends on what your need and fit are. But that being said, it's like when we're talking about incoming players, we're talking about positions that are going to be upgraded, that are going to continue to block, a guy like Jamie Donnelly, Josh Keeley, Dane Scarlett, where it's like, me personally, it's like, when I think about, especially specifically with a guy like Dane Scarlett, it's the fact that he's been on loan a couple times and has failed to take advantage of his loan, and hasn't necessarily put himself in a position where he's going to make himself attractive. Last year with Oxford United didn't necessarily play all that well with Oxford, so it's going to be a situation where I think his transfer value is $2 million. You might be able to maximize a sell of Dane Scarlett, but that being said, it's like I worry about keeping young players on the roster just to fill a roster spot without actually a plan of them actually playing them. Is your mic on, bud?
I'm just because noise that. Ryan says that Harry Kane failed 90% of his loans, and it was only Sherwood that gave him a chance to saw him flying. I agree with that. Harry Kane flopped to every loan going. And Daniel Levy wanted to accept a £1 million bid from Leicester to sell Harry Kane. And it was Sherwood who said, no, he's starting tomorrow. And Tim Sherwood did say that on the podcast a couple of years ago.
Can I ask you a question real quick? When we're talking about Harry Kane and his failed loans, okay, that's great. But what have you seen of Dane Scarlett that gives you the impression that he's going to be able to elevate himself at this age to replicate, early Harry Kane numbers with Tottenham Hotspur?
I don't think nobody can be another Harry Kane. It'd be ridiculous for me to say, oh, Dean Scarlett, his numbers compared to Harry Kane. They don't. Harry Kane was a once-in-a-generation striker. That he was a freak of nature. It was a bit like Jimmy Greaves. Jimmy Greaves was one of them once in the generation player that you will only see once or twice in your lifetime. Harry Kane was so exceptional when it came to Tottenham. And many players do fail. Many players don't fulfill their ability on loans because maybe they're not getting enough time on loans, or maybe they get injuries or whatever. But I think I've seen enough in Dean Scarlett last season to know that he could be a decent backup striker for us, a decent striker that will come on and learn. He needs to learn, and he needs to learn at Tottenham. It's all right putting them out on loan. Putting them out on loan is about gaining them experience of playing in the league, playing football in the league environment. If you really want to push the player on, They need to stay within the squad and learn off the experienced players. And that's what Man United had. And I think it's also, where was it? I actually agree with this. Neil said as well. This is we don't have the type of veteran players to show these younger players the Spurs way. Man United had a load of players that showed them the Man United way. And we don't have that. And the likes of, where I will agree with you, some of them youngsters probably will have to be sold. I don't think the likes of Donnelly, you don't sell. That man, I mean, me and David agree on this. This fella has an eye for a pass. You got Josh Keeley, who's absent doing it. He's a brilliant young goalkeeper who will become the next Pat Jennings. I'm really convinced of that. And I think Dean Scarlett has the ability to become a really decent Premier League striker. He just needs time at Tottenham to learn off the veterans that are at the club. But we haven't got them veterans to teach these young players the Tottenham way. But I think, to answer your question, I think Dean Scarlett will not go up to Harry Kane levels, because nobody will ever reach Harry Kane levels. But I think he can become a decent, probably Jermaine Defoe, a Robbie Keane type striker for me. I really do. I think he will go to them heights. Nobody's going to reach the Harry Kane levels, because Harry Kane, I'm sorry to say, is a freak. Is a once in a generational striker. We haven't seen anyone like Jimmy Greaves, and the other one I can compare to Jimmy Greaves is Harry Kane. And Jimmy Greaves left Tottenham in 1970. And we had to wait a whole 70s, 80s, 90s to 2000 to Harry Kane came in. I just think it's one of those freak of natures. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's my opinion on that.
My biggest issue is that there's not going to be a lot of minutes for those guys, and that's my biggest problem. Whether whether they're blocked by more experienced players, that to me it's like you're also, this is the other problem. You're also damaging their overall transfer value by keeping them on a roster but not playing them, because you actually have to be able to showcase something. But that being said, and again, there's like 3 or 4 names on that list, Irma, that right now we're in a position to sell high, because again, when you look at Paratici and what he did originally for this academy to actually bolster the academy. For me, at least, I feel like he's going to be able to replicate bringing in good youth teams that are going to be able to come through the academy and jump into the loan army and recycle. It's like, I know that you mentioned, Josh Keeley, you rate Josh Keeley very high, but that being said, in another couple of years, there's going to be another Josh Keeley. That to me is like, when I take a look at other teams around the Premier League and you look at exactly what they do in their transfer business, some of these most successful teams, take emotion out of it, and they look at it and say, well, yeah, there's a good possibility that he can facilitate a roster spot and be a very productive player 2-3 years down the road. But the reality is, right now, we know for a fact there's going to be more young kids coming through the academy that are potentially going to be on that same level or better. And right now is an opportunity for us to actually do a good piece of transfer business and move on from some of these players, because we're going to, we're trying to bring in Brian Mbemo or Xavi Simons or whoever the case may be. And so for us right now, we would rather take that and enhance our transfer budget than potentially putting them out on loan or leaving them on the first team, because we have to facilitate certain roster recommendations when it comes to the Champions League. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, look, I get what you're saying. I do get what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying, but I think for you to progress as a team, I think you need to use your youngsters, and you need your youngsters around. You can't buy success. If you got the under 21s like we had that were very successful, then players deserve a chance in the first team. Then players deserve a chance to prove their worth, and Ange did not give them their chance, rightly or wrongly. But when we needed them, they did score the winning goals in that European tie to win us the game. And it was the kids that won it that night, and they proved the point last night. You give us a chance, we will take it, and we are good enough to be in the first team. Lancashire.
Guys like Ajay or Callum Oluwise, who I actually, who I'd actually like to see continue to stay around here on loan. I think that I think now that I think those guys, and maybe even Mikey Moore to an extent, where I feel like their best attributes would be at least on a 6-month loan to start the season. But that being said, let's get to some of the chat here, because David Clark says Spurs fans make me laugh because I heard them say we don't play Odebertel or Son in the number 10 spot. None of them can play that role like Donnelly. It's laughable.
Yeah, I agree. I think Donnelly is the future number 10. I really do. I think he's the one to take over from James Maddison. I love Donnelly. I think he's such a talent. And it's great. We have so much talent at Tottenham that we don't use. And it is laughable. And I agree with David. It is laughable because we have an under-21 team that was so successful, was so brilliant at what the players have all played together. And that's what you do. Man United did it so brilliantly with the class of 92. They brought 4 or 5 players in together and they started them together. They know how each other play. They know how each other tick. They know what runs they're going to make. So you really need to follow the 90 class of 92. And we at Tottenham don't do that. We don't use the youngsters. So many great youngsters have come through our academy over the years. Glenn Hoddle, for one, one of the greatest Spurs players we've ever had, came through our Spurs academy. Steve Perriman came through our Spurs academy. If you look, Aaron Lennon, I think, came through our Spurs academy during the years. I know we brought in players like Jermaine Defoe. Many other players that came on to be really successful players came through our academy. So it's about taking a chance with them, about saying, do you know what? We'll get some experienced players in, but we've got a core group of young players here that are good enough. If you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think they're good enough and they're old enough. And I think we need to start using them more next season. Start playing them in the League Cup early rounds. Start playing them in the FA Cup early rounds if it's a decent high. And start bedding them in. Start bedding them in the Champions League. Give them experience.
Yeah. And I would say specifically for a guy like Jamie Donnelly, if you are going to keep him around and you're going to keep him in the first team, then it can't be just the occasional first round cup match in the League Cup or the FA Cup, but it also has to be in league play in the Champions League as well too. Like you're gonna have, like you want him to facilitate some minutes early in the season. Like if he were able to get, like, throughout the course of the season, like maybe 1,000 to 1,500 minutes, I would be okay with that, because now there's a defined role for Jamie Donnelly. But quickly at the bottom of the screen right there are 4 names that are leaving the squad this season, which opens up at least 300,000 pounds on the wage budget, which will give Tottenham even more flexibility when it comes to bringing in certain players that may or may not need high weekly wages. So here's Neil Shafton, who says you threw a bunch in the deep end, and they did okay for their very hectic first season of the English Premier League, but they have 3 guys who are now experienced in the EPL, and I'm sure he's referring to Matisse Tell, Lucas Bergvall, and Archie Gray. And I do agree with that 100%. And I think they exceeded expectations. But you can also add Wilson Odegaard to that list, and Mikey Moore, who saw playing time last season. And right there, I believe that's 4 or 5 youngsters that are in and around the first team that, in my opinion, Dermot exceeded expectations.
Yeah, he did. Mikey Moore. I love Mikey Moore. He's such a great little player. I just want to say something. Yes, I got it wrong with Aaron Lennon. He did come from Leeds Academy. I do apologize. The old brain doesn't work all the time, so I do apologize. And David as well. I've never praised Daniel Levy for saying he wanted to win the Premier League. I never said that. I just wanted to point that out. I actually never did praise Daniel Levy. If you watched the show last night, I'm sure you did. We did laugh about it, and we said if you want to win the Premier League, you need to back it up with money. And yeah, we do need to use the kids. I agree with you, but I never praised Daniel Levy, so I just want to put that out there. Sorry. Big up David, though.
David Clark says Spurs need a backup striker who is a direct player to the incumbent in place in the team, and that's not Dane Scarlett. I 100% agree. He's not necessarily a direct striker. I do happen to agree with that. 100%.
Yeah, look. You're right, David is right. We need a decent backup striker. I think we need a decent striker. Full stop. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think buying a decent backup. We need a decent striker. We need a striker that's gonna score you 15 to 20 goals a
Yeah.
season. Dean,
So, somebody that can challenge Dominic Solanke for the starting spot week in and
I,
week out. I completely agree with you.
yeah, and I think if you're gonna play Dominic Solanke, you're playing him in more of a shadow of a 10 role, not a 10 role, but you're playing just behind the main striker and let him do all his work because the amount of times he came deep and came deep to get the ball, and that left the space for Johnson to come in on the wings to pap in them goals, and it was Dominic Solanke doing that. We need a deep striker that's going to stay up there, be a goal poacher, be somebody that's going to sit in the 6-yard box. He's going to be in
Yeah.
there and get the goals in. But we do need somebody to push Solanke, but I think Solanke's more of your. The problem is
I can see Dominic Solanke, though. I think Thomas Frank is probably going to try to use him as a poacher, especially if they play 2 up front, where where Dominic Solanke can just be camped in the channels, and instead of using him the way that Ange did, which is having come down far deeper to make a touch and then make his run. That didn't necessarily allow him to get in position last season. And I would probably assume that if they're playing 2 up front, there's going to be a false striker. A false 9 along with Dominic Solanke, and I think that's going to put him in a lot more. I think he's probably going to be that 15 to 20 goal scorer next season.
Do you know what? I think the problem we've had is Harry Kane did both, and that's the problem we've had. Harry Kane was able to drop deep, but always when the ball was in the 6-yard area, he was there to put it in the back of the net, and we've struggled to replace that. Now we replaced Dominic Solanke, who does the first part of Harry Kane. But we need another decent striker who does the second part. And that shows how good Harry Kane was. That shows what a generational great he was. That he's once in a lifetime striker that any club would love to have. And we were so lucky to have him at Tottenham. And I hope he does come back and finish his career at Spurs, even if it's for a season or 2 seasons. Comes back and does it.
Yes,
I would love that. He wants that Premier League. He wants that record of Alan Shearer. By the way, I'm telling you, he does want that record.
And now that they've won they ended the trophy drought. I think that potentially changes things as well too.
Yeah, it does.
Rain Man goes on to say that our squad management and development is shocking, not helped by a new head coach and transfer management every 2 seasons. 100%, because when you chop and change, your philosophy changes as well too, and that obviously doesn't help. We have Rebel. Good to see you, Rebel.
Rebel.
It's been a minute. Good to have you along. Any striker is only good as the quality of ball that comes into him. 100%. The likes of Watkins is what you need, and allow Tell to develop behind them. 100%. Getting quality like Ollie Watkins through the door. I 100% agree with that.
I think Ollie Watkins, I hate to say it, but I think Ollie Watkins, when he leaves Villa, will go to Manchester. I think he will go to either Manchester club. I really do. Everyone was on about like Auburn. Jonathan David's still available on a free. He's on a free this summer. There's a lot of decent strikers that are on a free this summer. Or you go and buy Vlahovic from Juventus. What's that going to set you back? 40, 50 million euro? Or pounds, sorry. I work in euros. Sorry, I meant pounds. Sorry. I'm so used to saying euros for everything. I apologize. But, it's not going to break the bank, is it? But the problem is, Stephen, I just want to ask you this question. The problem is, right, we can say we want any player under the sun. This player be good for us. That player be good for us. All these players be good for us. The biggest problem we have at the end of the day is we don't pay wages. They have this structure. And they won't break that structure. If you want to be successful and you want to win trophies and you want to be at the top end of the Premier League, fighting for the Champions League places, going deep into cup competitions, going deep in the Champions League, you need to pay the wages. Correct. And I'm sure to God, if Daniel Levy got rid of this stupid structure I think on the potch, we would have been the most successful team,
Yeah.
the second most successful
Yeah.
team in our history, if we
Well,
paid the wages. We don't pay wages, and that's the stumbling block. That will always be a stumbling block.
The interesting thing is that, you know, we were still playing in the old White Hart Lane, right? So the revenue wasn't as great as it is now with the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but it's still your observation is still correct though, right? Because now we're in a stadium that allows us to generate so much more revenue, and yet the wage structure still continues to be exactly what it was, you know, 6, 7, 8 years ago under Pochettino. And you're absolutely right. And here's a point in case. And again, I keep saying this because you have to highlight this. If they're willing to give Timo Werner 165 pounds a week on wages, but they're unwilling to do it for Brian and Bemo, that's a problem. That's an absolute bit. And I don't throw this word around too much, Dermot, but it's absolutely shambolic.
It is. I mean, I what makes me laugh, right? And I know you mentioned White Hart Lane and the stream and the money coming into the stadium. But right, you look at Manchester United, for example, okay? Or you look at Liverpool, for example. They don't do massive stuff at theirs. They still have their original stadiums, right?
Mm-hmm.
As much as we all laugh about Old Trafford falling down and all the bits of last we do have with Column and Rebel. But the point I'm making is they still have their original stadiums, but they pay the wages to bring in the big players. We don't. It doesn't matter if you have White Hart Lane or if you have the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I've always said this. I'd rather have White Hart Lane and a championship winning side than the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and the shite we've been watching. It doesn't matter if you have a 4,000-seat stadium or a 100,000-seat stadium. If you don't pay the wages, you don't bring in the decent players to give you success. We had major success at White Hart Lane. Why? Because we paid the wages. We bought the wages to bring in the decent players to plung us on to bigger things. Keith Birkinshaw was allowed to get the players he wanted to go his success after we were relegated in 77 to win 2 FA Cups and UEFA Cup. Bill Nick was allowed to get the players he wanted to build the double winning side of 60-61 and go on that amazing 10-year of winning 3 FA Cups, 2 League Cups, 2 European trophies in his tenure at Tottenham. Daniel Levy comes in, I'm only spending this much. Okay, we could have had Jack Grealish before he went to Man City. I think
we had Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, there's many players that came to look at our club. And it was, we'll go to Tottenham. Tottenham's still a big club. Tottenham have the big name. Tottenham are a massive club, and nothing will ever change my mind on that. But we don't act like a big club. We act like we're a small club with a small mentality. We're Tottenham Hotspur, for Christ's sake. Pay the wages, get the decent players in, and we will be successful. And I'll tell you one thing, Daniel Levy will not have one. If he'd done that, no Tottenham fan would be protesting against the board or Levy, because we'd be successful and winning stuff. We failed Poch, we failed Mourinho, we failed Conte, we failed Nuno, we failed Ange in a way. Though Ange did win a trophy, we did fail him last season with the 2 transfer windows because we don't pay the wages. And if he doesn't want to be in the kitchen, if the kitchen's too hot for Daniel Levy, then he needs to get out the kitchen and go somewhere cooler and let somebody else come in and take it on and move us on and pay the wages to get the players we need to be successful. We're a sleeping giant. We need to be awoken.
And that's why I'm curiously optimistic with Vinny, because the new president of football operations that is there specifically to oversee the football side of the operation. And I'm curious to see if he actually has the balls, Dermot, to look Daniel Levy in the eye and say, listen, man, you need to stay out of the way. All I need from you is the budget, and we'll figure it out. And if there's a player that they can get in, but it's going to cost them £200,000 a week or maybe even higher, they're going to do it because that's the right thing to do. David Clark says the Spurs Academy has been pointless for decades because they are put out on loan for 3 years and have no chance of being a first-team player. If they are on loan for more than 2 seasons, then sell them. I 100% agree with this. And this is my mindset as well, David. That was a very excellent comment right there.
Yeah, I look, I get where David's coming from, but I think you got to use your youngsters. But if they're just going to sit there, then yeah, you sell them. You move them on. You let them progress in their career. But we've been very negligent in our way that we've used our youngsters. We really have. We've been really poor.
Absolutely. So here is the 164 Spur. It's good to have you along, man. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And I want to thank you for stopping into the chat today. We have so much for the new stadium, going to be a game changer.
Yeah,
100%. Super Tottenham TV.
I still laugh at that. I still laugh at that.
I do too. But that being said, you listen to guys like Vinny and you listen to guys like Paratici. He wants to make Tottenham Hotspur Stadium a fortress, and he wants to build a wall around. Wants to build a Tottenham wall around it. But I'll tell you what, the only way you do that is if you show ambition and you win football games. Super Tottenham TV. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you into the chat. It's very good to have you on the chat. Let's go to. Hold on. Here we go. Super Tottenham TV says, I get the point, Derma, but it has nothing to do with the stadium. It's the owner that doesn't have ambition. We don't buy quality, nor do we pay the wages.
I agree. It is to do with the owner, but everyone seems to forget. Everyone's having a go at Daniel Levy, but it's Joe Lewis who's actually the main owner. He's the one that's supposed to pump the money into Tottenham Hotspur. He's the one that's supposed to give Levy the money to give to Paratici, whoever, to buy the players. And the whole ownership as a whole needs to go. It needs to go, and it needs to go now, because we have a chance to build on something. We won a European trophy. We've got an opportunity once again to build on this, to build on the foundations that Ange Postecoglou left us, as Thomas Frank said in his interview, to stand on the shoulders of what he did. And this ownership, again and again and again, it's proven it doesn't want to be successful. It wants to get plenty of money in and put it in their hip pockets. But you can say what you like about the Glazers, and they've been woeful for United, but they have spent money on players. They have backed every manager. And I'm not praising the Glazers. I think the Glazers are absolute hypocrites. I think they're the worst thing ever that happened to Manchester United, and the sooner they leave United, the better. In my view, I think the sooner some of these owners leave football, the better. In my view, it is the better, because if you look at all these owners, they've polluted the game. They've polluted the transfer market, where our transfer market's gone crazy because of the likes of Man City or Manchester United.
PSG,
exactly.
Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and it's almost like the housing market, right? If there's money in that area, the value of the land is going to go up, and the price of the house is going up. It's essentially a bubble, and that's exactly what the transfer market is a crazy ass bubble. And the only way that it stops is if teams refuse to do it. But that being said, it is what it is.
And you know yourself, you know yourself. I mean, you look at I always use the transfer market as you look at like an economy, right? When you look at an economy, right, it's all different bubbles, isn't it? All different sectors. If one sector's goes bad, then that's a domino effect to a recession. And it only needs is the transfer.
Good point.
The transfer thing to go bust, then the whole football could be in trouble. And I agree with David Clark's here. Says Joe Lewis is 100% at fault. He is. For all Spurs woes for over 20 years, he's a majority owner. He's the one who puts his godson in total control of the club. So sorry, Levy will never change your mind. Look, I agree with you, David.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
The interesting thing, though, Derma, and here's why he's right. And I said this at the top of the show, that owner involvement. So owner contribution into the team, and I'm not talking revenue or sponsorship deals. We're talking just solid liquid investment from your ownership group into the football team over the course of Enoch's tenure. Their contribution every season equals to about £5 million. And in England, that it puts them like right around 40 to 45. Tottenham are below championship sides. when it comes to ownership contributions into the football side. And and we talk about wages. That's why they sit at 42% wages versus wages versus total revenue. Where teams like Aston Villa are at the 90%. That leaves them right at about 11th or 12th in the Premier League when it comes to wage percentage. It's that runs opposite of the ambition of what Daniel Levy was talking about a couple of days ago in his interview, where he actually drops I want to win the Premier League, Champions League, that type of stuff. Well, the proof is in the pudding, and over the course of the last 24 seasons, Tottenham have been that quintessential self-sufficient team where the ownership group is not going to invest. And so I guess the overall question is going to be, is this going to be something different? Are they actually going to put up and actually bring in those type of players that are going to be able to accomplish that mission? That is yet to be seen.
That is yet to be seen. Look, I know what's happening behind the scenes at the moment. That investment is coming now. On what way, shape, or form that's going to come in, I can't say yet, because I do know, but I'm not allowed to say. But just put it this way, that the Levy era or the ENIC era could be coming to an end.
Yeah.
We could be seeing this. We could be seeing probably the last throw of the dice of this era, and Tottenham being moved on. Now, if that, wherever shape or form that comes in, that if they're just by the footballing side, and do the Man United way, I think that'd be the way it will happen. I do believe that. I do believe it will probably be the football side that's bought out and the business side's left in the ENIC Levy hands, which is they're more interested in the business side than they are the football side. But hey ho, Mr. Levy and Mr. Lewis, culture shock for you here. We're a football club.
Go figure. Go figure. Last night, Dermot, I was asked what my impressions were of that Daniel Levy-Vinny interview, and I said, listen, it almost feels like Daniel Levy understands that his time at Tottenham is coming to an end, and it feels like when he wants to go out with a major trophy. So and I agree with you. I think we know that there is going to be a takeover at some point. And me personally, if you ask me if Daniel Levy is going to be here in 5 years, I'm going to say no. I would probably put it at 3 to 5 years. And so I think there's going to be that drive to win a major trophy, because he wants to go out on a high note. So he can at least solidify his legacy at Tottenham Hotspur. I think he's that egotistical that he thinks that if he can win a Premier League or a Champions League trophy as he's going out the door, it's going to solidify legacy for him. So can I see Daniel Levy changing his tune for the next 3 years so they can get closer to? Yeah, maybe. But again, we have such a large sample size of him going in the opposite direction. It's kind of hard to believe it until we actually see it.
Yeah, it is. And look, I just, problem I have, right, Steve, is, look, I'm a fan I'm 48, I'm 15 2 years. I've lived through the success of Keith Birkinshaw. I've seen this I've seen this go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. From us winning FA Cups and European trophies to being on the brink of bankruptcy and going out of business. And I keep repeating this, but I think it's a point that always has to be made, that we were nearly going out of existence. We were nearly going out of being no more Tottenham Hotspur. Alan Sugar and whatever anyone thinks of Terry Venables came in and saved the club, and then ENIC and Levy bought into that buyout or bought into saving our club. So they've been involved in Tottenham Hotspur from as early as 1991 with a little small stake, and they built the stake up over the next 10 years to take over the club. We drove Alan Sugar out of the club. And I think, to be fair, and I'm saying this now, and then people may shoot me down, people may call me an idiot in the comments, or say you're talking shite or whatever. I think Alan Sugar was a better owner than Levy and ENIC have been. I do genuinely believe that, and I know Wayne is
from a trophy standpoint. From a trophy standpoint,
standpoint. no, trophy standpoint, Levy has won more than Alan Sugar. Alan Sugar won 1 League Cup. Levy's
I
won
see.
2 now.
Was
But
it,
if
Alan
you look,
Sugar wasn't so Alan Sugar wasn't around in 91 when they won the FA Cup?
no, it was Ivan Scholar. Alan Sugar
Okay.
came in the
Fair enough.
summer of 91.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
Alan Sugar put his own money into the club. He paid.
Yep.
He paid out of his own money. I remember we were in 93. What was it? 93, 94, or 94, 95. We were docked 6 points or 12 points, I think. Banned out the FA Cup and fined heavily for what we did under Ivan Scholar. And he went out and bought Jurgen Klinsmann, Demishku,
Yep.
and Popescu of that great Romanian side of the 94 World Cup. And
it was those transfers that allowed Tottenham to stay above the relegation line because they were in a relegation scrap that season.
No, with that year, we had Ozzy Adilas at the start of the season. Then he got sacked. Jerry Francis came in, and then we went on this amazing run. We were allowed back into the FA Cup. We reached the semi-finals and lost to Everton 4-1. Yeah, Jurgen Klinsmann come back under I think it was Christian Gross to save us from relegation in that year. But Alan Sugar, he can be questioned as being a bit of an idiot, but nobody can question his heart was in the right place. Daniel Levy and Enoch and Joe Lewis, heart's not in the right place. They see Tottenham as a cash cow, and they've used it as a cash cow. And the sooner they leave, the better. It was 94, and when it was 91, I just checked it now, double checked it myself because I know my old noggin ain't great as it used to be. But it was the summer of 91 that came in with Terry Reynolds. But I still think Alan Sugar was a far better owner than Levy and Ig. And people will probably shoot me down for that comment, but
and you would probably, I know what you're saying because there were seasons where the results weren't great. But that being said, from a contribution standpoint, you're absolutely right. Sugar definitely invested in his club to at least bring players in to give them a better chance. Neil Shafton says Ange at least spoiled the apple cart by winning a trophy. It almost seems like they were upset that Ange won something. Enoch really didn't seem to be happy about that. And that's actually a funny way of looking at it. And I think you might be right because with winning a trophy comes expectations, and expectations are not something that they like because expectations mean that there's now an expectation that they have to spend money to be competitive in the Champions League, which is probably something they don't want to do.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. They're thinking, oh shit, we have to spend money now.
David Clark says, for you realize that 90% of all English football fans have never will see their beloved club ever play in the top division of football. Spurs fans since 1950 has seen Spurs 74 of 75 years in the first division.
Yeah. I mean, fans like that, I totally tip my hat off to and admire, and I always listen to because they're the ones with the experience. They're the fans that have seen it all. I mean, I've been a Spurs fan now for over 40 years. 74 years to be a Tottenham fan. Philip Brady's the same. He's the same. It's sort of probably a little behind Mr. David Clark, but they've seen it all. And you listen to them fans, and look, me and Wayne can only go back to the 80s. Like Tequila can only go back to the 90s. I think you and me around you sort of middle 80s. I think for you, Steve.
No, for me it was the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was all because my brother was an Arsenal fan, and I absolutely hated Arsenal from them. I didn't like their colors, I didn't like their badge, I didn't like Arsene Wenger, I didn't like the arrogance, and when I found out who their biggest rival was, that's when I started watching videos of Tottenham Hotspur, and that's when I became a Hotspur fan.
See? You were born to be a Spurs fan. You were born to be a Spurs fan.
I like the quiet confidence of being a Spurs supporter, and I also I just like what Tottenham stands for. Archer says if Levy Enoch are gearing up for a sale, they wouldn't suddenly start spending more on wages. More like the opposite. He has a point. Yeah, he definitely has.
He has a very good point. He has a very good point. And look, we have to see what happens, won't we? This transfer window will define next season. I just hope it's a good one. I just really do.
I do too. Here's my thing. Wayne Bonner says, I think there's too much money in football. I'm a believer of a wage cap. So respect Levy's stance on that, but not necessarily the transfer policy. So he's so Wayne Bonner is a um,
No,
he's a proponent of a salary cap.
look, there is a wage cap coming in next season. I think there is. If I'm right, I think there is a wage cap coming in next season or the season after. And I think you and me, Steve, were the first ones to break that. I think back at the back end of last year,
Yep.
we both said on the show that there'll be a wage cap coming in, and lo and behold, there's a wage cap coming in. I don't know if it's next season or the season after. I need to double check on that. I need to ask our source because he's the one that told us. But no, I agree. There should be a wage cap. There should be actually a transfer cap as well. That no club can sell a player above a certain value. Because if you look at it right, say a player 5 years ago was worth, say, 50 million, right? And the good midfielder's worth 45, 50 million. What's he worth now? Over 100 million. How many players have been transferred, and you and me or I've said, or we've all talked together and shows that player's way overpriced. He's way overvalued. You look at Richie. Richie's not a 60 million pound, 50 million pound player. You look at Dominic Solanke. He's not a 65 million pound striker.
Correct.
He's a 30, 40 million pound striker. So
Correct.
I think there has to be, if they want to keep control of this and they want to keep control of finances, the problem is TV money has pumped so much money to within the game. The TV rights were sold in 92-93 for around 2.5 million. The TV rights for the next window have been sold for I think it's around, I'm not 100%. I will do my research and I will get a proper figure for you for the next time we're live. But I think it's around 16 or 6.4 billion. So do you know what I mean? I just don't know.
I would what I would like to see is the removal of agent fees. Agent fees can go up to as high as 8% in any type of deal, which is going to expand the actual total value. And when you think about the add-ons, right? So you see like 55 million pounds plus 10 million add-ons. It's usually the add-ons that are generally going to be the agent fees. And me personally, that's something that I would like to rid of the transfer. The whole transfer strategy. But that being said, having a cap, or even a floor, a salary floor where teams have to spend at least a minimum amount. But that being said, the question is, number one, if they wanted to put in a salary cap, that would have to go to a league vote, correct?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would have to go to a.
And I can't see. I can't see the Saudi ownership of Man City, Arsenal's ownership, Liverpool's ownership necessarily being in favor of that, right? Because that's, yes, we have PSR in place, but as we see with Chelsea developing ties to the Saudi Pro League, if they want to move a player, they can just move a player. You know what I mean?
I mean,
so there's ways around PSR where a salary cap is like a hard cap.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the PSR. I mean, Chelsea sold their own women's side to themselves, basically, to get themselves out of PSR. And we still don't know what's happening with Man City. We still don't know what punishment they're going to get. So I really thought by now, I thought before the transfer window came out that we would hit something on that, which now makes me really nervous that I think Man City are going to get away with it. They're just going to get a slap on the wrist. And that makes me really nervous.
Well, because Man City has all the money in the world, and they can bring in so many lawyers to drag this thing out, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're dragging this out to a point where it stays out of the headlines. Wayne Bonner says Sugar did what he could with the club. He started building up the lane, great stadium, to where we are now. So we talk about building off the shoulders. If Thomas Frank talked about building off the shoulders of Ange Postecoglou, he was absolutely right. Same could be said with Alan Sugar. Rainman says, so much respect for you. Thanks, my guy. And I do appreciate the kind words. Wayne Bonner again says, I love the way Steve talks about that a lot. He needs to turn his brother to the right side. I don't think that'll ever happen. I can't imagine my brother bailing on Arsenal. He's just that insufferable.
Yeah. Well, all brothers are.
Oh, that's exactly
Believe
right.
me.
The sibling rivalry is absolutely real.
Yeah.
David Clark says, "You imagine if our club was in the conference with no chance of ever seeing your team play in the top division." I know this because I used to go and watch my son play in goal in semi-pro football.
Yeah.
Super Tottenham TV. That was 34 years ago, a very long time ago. Tottenham were never going down under as a club. It was too big with a massive fan base, which is always attractive to a new buyer and to buy to save the club.
I
actually
disagree with that. I slightly disagree with that because Tottenham were too big of a club to go down in 77 than we did. Nobody expected. I know it was the decline, but nobody ever expected Spurs to go down in 77. Big clubs do go down. Nobody's too big to go down. I think West Ham's going to go down next season. I think they're going to be relegated. That's my view.
I also think that if Manchester United continues to be in such disarray, would it surprise me if they had a season where they got relegated? No. Manchester United is in such disarray.
Yeah, it is. And again, that no club's too big to go down. And that's always been the old saying. And I agree with you. If United get stuck down there, have they got the players to get them out of it? We don't know, do we? It's all lifts and buts until the season starts. Right. But I love this time of year. I love the time of year. Everyone's starting now. They've had the summer break. Now we're getting ready for the season. It's starting to build already. The momentum's starting to go, and I love it. I love this time of year.
I do too. I've heard that David Clark says, I've heard that Spurs have cooled interest in Semenyo because Bournemouth are sticking to their £65 million valuation for a player. And yeah, it's so right now, Spurs and Manchester United have balked a little bit because they're asking 65 million for Semenyo. And here's the thing, Derma, right? You can understand the price tag for Dominic Solanke because, strikers are a commodity. There's not a lot of strikers on the open market that necessarily make sense for every team. And if you have a good striker, you're not letting him go. So you can understand that you can understand why Bournemouth was asking for 65 for Solanke, but for Semenyo, who isn't necessarily a consistent goal contributor. I'm not saying that he's not a good player. But for them to take a hardline stance and put 65 million on his name, me personally, I think this is probably going to be one of those negotiations that are going to drag out through the transfer window. But eventually, Tottenham will land on their number. But that being said, Spurs have different options. They're not just going to pay. They're not going to pay it in desperation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, it proves players being overvalued. Again, I mean, Bournemouth just say, "Oh, Tottenham paid 60-odd million for Solanke. They'll pay it again for this player." So it's them chancing their arm. But again, it's player being overvalued. Is he worth 65 million? No. But will Tottenham pay it? No, and I agree with you. I think that will run that one. That will get done, but it will run to the end of the window.
Like you can understand Brentford's stance on Brian Mbeumo because every single year the progression is shown in his numbers, and you can see that his development has put him to a point where he had a fantastic season last year, a 20-goal season, and you can understand Brentford's stance on what they're looking for, and you can see it that Brian Mbeumo has actually played his way into being that type of player. I cannot say the same for Semenyo. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, Dermot. I just 65 to sit there and grossly overvalue your player. Like for Bournemouth being the club size that it is, I understand trying to maximize your value, your player's value, but then there's also reality. So it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Jazz Fusion, good to see you, my guy. I love seeing Jazz Fusion in the chat rooms. If the EPL unilaterally imposed an agent cap, guess where top talents will no longer be flocking to?
Yeah, the one flock to the Premier League. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Rainman says Derma will confirm this. The last 10 to 15 years has seen agents become a hub for transfers, but it's used always it used to always be club to club. I think it started with super agents like Joachim and Mendes.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Mhm.
It started sneaking in around the middle '90s. I forget the name of the agent. He was I forget. He was Dennis Wise' agent. He was such a controversial figure. He had a big cigar all the time. Forget what his name was, but he was the first one to come in. And then agents are a problem, and FIFA just don't do anything about it. FIFA's so
Mhm.
corrupt, UEFA's so corrupt
Yep.
that they won't do anything about it. Until you do, then nothing will ever change.
I'm glad you mentioned FIFA because Jazz Fusion hit that one correct. The problem that would this problem would require a FIFA intervention, and it would still end up in courts for
Yeah,
years. 100%.
it will.
Uh,
Nothing will ever change on that. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm going to have to pop off
yep.
in a little bit because
Yeah,
I've got
because we're actually
news.
we are actually Derma. The timing is impeccable because we are now coming to the end of the show.
Yeah.
And again, I want to thank all the 100 or so fans that are tuning in today. I also want to thank everybody in the chat as well. So the plan right now is the next watch along right now is scheduled on Sunday at 7 o'clock for the U.S. men's national team. I am debating which Club World Cup team is going to be playing for tonight. But Dermot, that's what's happening on stateside footy. What's happening on THFC TWD?
I don't know if there'll be a show tonight or not. I haven't made up my mind yet if I am doing one or not. If I am, it'll be only be a small one, and I might do it solo. I might just do that one by myself. I know Monday I'm covering a World Club,
Yep.
a World Club game for you on Monday. I forget what time
Yep.
it is, but that will be put up.
It's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock UK time. It's Seattle versus PSG.
Yeah.
I think
US
that
I always call them the US Tottenham side. They're
yeah.
Seattle's like Tottenham. They're the team I follow, so I have to get Seattle top now. And
Yeah,
that
and
sorry, go on.
go
Sorry, man.
ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I
And
interrupted.
then tomorrow we're doing the fan show. I know a few people
Yep.
in the chat are going to come on. I know Wayne's coming on. I know Tony's going to come on as well. We're not going to have it come on and come off because that doesn't work. We're just going to have you all on, and we're going to have a bit of a debate. I think Steve's joining me for that as well, or
Yep.
James. I think all three of us might be on there as well.
I believe
And
you're
we have
right.
a big debate over Spurs. But that's on tomorrow, and then of course Newsbeat every night at 8 o'clock from Monday to Friday. There will be what I'm going to do in the next week is put up a proper schedule up on our members board to let you know exactly when we're on,
Excellent.
what time, and when you can see us on. But please do get over to Stateside Footy. Steve has been such such a breath of fresh air when he's joined up with us here at THFC Till We Die. He really has. And again, thank him for all the work he put in while I was away on holiday. I can't thank you enough, man. I am so appreciative and grateful.
Yep.
And
Not a
everyone
problem.
show him some love because this is our sister channel. It is the greatest American Spurs channel in the US. If you want to get your Spurs news, you come here. And also, if you're in Europe, you come over to us. So, yeah,
Yep.
we're both building. We're on our way to 5K. Steve, I was on the 3, and Steve said, "No, Dermo, no, Dermo." He told me in the background, "No, Dermo. You got to think big, man. You got to think
You got to
like
think big.
you got to think
Yeah.
like we do in America. You got to think bigger. Shoot for the stars." So, do you know what? Okay, we're on our way to 5. Steve's on his way
Yep.
to 2K. 1,000's not
Yep.
good enough for Steve. When to get
Well,
Steve
you know
to
what?
2K?
Here's the thing, right? And I'm glad that you said that because as of right now, here's the thing. Yes, we do think big, but right now, it is a race. It's a race to 1,000 subs first. But every single milestone that we hit, whether it's 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, there are going to be giveaways as well too. And once we reach that 1,000 sub plateau, we can start doing membership shows. That's when Stateside Footy is going to be aggressive with guests. That'll be able to facilitate members as well too. And I want to make this channel not just be a good U.S. soccer channel, but also a Tottenham Hotspur channel, and that will allow me to be able to book guests that otherwise that probably wouldn't come on. So make sure you hit that subscription button. Also hit that like button too, and let's get this show out on YouTube within the algorithm. So there's that, but also on THFC TWD. Yes, Derma's absolutely right. There is ambition there, and we want to it's a race to 5K subs on THC TWD, because it's going to greatly influence our ability when it comes to membership shows. And there's also 3 different tiers of memberships that'll fit your budget. And the highest membership, you're going to get even better access, not only just to guests when we book them, but also with breaking news. And the ability to come on and join Derma and I on a membership show. So it's an opportunity for you to be a part of the platform. And that's what this is all about. It's not just me and Derma and that's it. That's not how this works. This is a community, and the community takes care of everyone. So if you show some love with your subscription, if you subscribe to this, I'm going to go ahead and take care of you. That's how I feel about this community, Derma.
And that's what we do. We started building when we started the channel, when Colin came aboard, and the guys from the Full Time Sports Network, who are our other partner as well on YouTube. We started to build. We laid the foundations to build the community. Steve has come in. Now we're building the house on the foundations that building.
That's exactly right.
We want to make this the safest, kindest, nicest community you come into. It doesn't matter if you leave in or leave out, or if you're frank in or frank out. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be criticized. You're not going to be told to go away. You're going to be welcomed, and your view is counted. Your view is going to be very welcomed. And yeah, we may disagree. We may not agree with your comment. We may not agree with what you say, but football's all about debate, isn't it? That's why we love the game.
That's exactly right.
Football's about opinions, and your opinions will always be respected, and we will never, ever, ever. We welcome all other fans from Newcastle, Everton, especially on THFC. Right. We've got other fans to come in, and we want to make it that it's a channel for everyone, and that sort of moves me on as well, Steve, to our new podcast, which we're starting.
That's exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up, because Derma and I are going to be launching a new Premier League podcast. The name yet hasn't necessarily been set in stone. But that being said, it's going to branch out from Tottenham Hotspur, because there's a lot to talk about from relegation scraps, yo-yo teams, and also Manchester City. But there's a lot of things that we can cover within the confines of the Premier League. So be on the lookout for that as we launch that. And there's also the occasional political show. Am I right, Derma?
Yeah, there is. I'll just let you know, me and Dave Harris are starting a new podcast on Tuesday, guys, at 1:00.
The Irish Lads.
Irish Lads talk Spurs, so we're going to be doing that. And me and Philip Brady do a political channel, Dermot Democratic France. There's a video we put up there the other night about what's happening in the world, but anything majorly news that breaks. And Steve's going to join us from time to time then, because I love talking to Steve about other stuff than football. Me and Steve have really good conversations on the phone last week about what's happening in the world, and we may not agree. We come from it for different angles, but we do agree at the end. But we come from it for different angles, which I love. I love that, because I love other people's point of views, and I'm sitting there. Do you know what? You make a lot of sense there. So yeah, Steve will be joining us for that as well. Yeah, Dermot Democratic rights, but look, football comes first, Steve, doesn't it? Football is the number one priority. And that's where it is. So do go over. And a massive thank you to everyone that's like the shorts me and Steve have been I've been putting up shorts for me and Steve's streams that we've done together. The shorts are going through the roof. I mean, last night's short I put up has already reached number one. We did a short on the 19th. Steve, you and me. The need for a striker after Harry Kane. It's already sitting at 698 views as a short. We're only 2 off 700. So thank you so much for watching our shorts on here, on TikTok as well. TikTok's gone through the roof. And X as well. So big up to guys. So and follow us on all platforms.
I'm still debating whether I'm going to do a TikTok. I don't necessarily know how to do a TikTok, but it is what it is. Hey, and before we go, this is the last comment of the day. Wayne Bonner is twisting the arm, Derma. He is absolutely twisting along. He demands a watch along tonight. He demands it. All right, so fine, you're going to get one 9 o'clock Eastern, and I believe that's going to be 2 o'clock in the morning UK time. River Plate of Argentina versus Monterrey of Liga MX. That's going to be tonight's watch along. So Wayne, you get exactly what you wanted. You get the watch along, but you're going to have to stay up to watch it, my guy. So
can I just say thank you? I just want to say thank you to Wayne for the kind words as well. He's just said, down the bottom. Fair play, Dermot. When you bring someone into the channel, you always bring in the right folk who fit in. Thank you.
I appreciate
and
that.
I love working with Steve and James and Colin. I said it to Colin the other day. We have the best team on YouTube. We really do. And big up to Tequila's just come in. And Tequila's famous words, he's starting it already.
Oh, yeah.
Has the clown gone?
Yeah, he's mad. He's mad because Thomas Frank stole his cat. So allegedly that's what happened.
Tequila, he has. We've got new managers. Stop partying.
Jesus, that's crazy. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. I do want to thank the 100 or so that are currently watching. Of course, everyone in the chat, from Tequila to Wayne to some of the new guys, Rain Man, Super Tottenham TV. I just want to thank you guys for showing your support today. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It would be greatly appreciated. I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday afternoon, but more importantly, I hope your weekend goes as smoothly as you hoped it would be. Enjoy yourselves and make sure that you hang out with the people that you love, because it always makes everything better. You guys have a great afternoon.